Meanwhile, COVID-19 transmission is slowing down, but some cities are experiencing a resurgence, and all these while Luzon is under a state of calamity. What is next for the embattled Vice President? We discuss in this episode of the Chiefs. Welcome to this weekend edition of the Chiefs, and of course, with us are Ana Marie Pamintuan, the editor-in-chief of the Philippine Star, and Luchi Cruz Valdez, the head of News 5. Ladies, good evening and happy weekend.
Good evening, happy
Happy
weekend.
birthday, and
Happy birthday.
My mom doesn't know.
that's our top story for today.
Nag-free siya kasi Edo. Nag-freeze.
Okay. Ayan. Tumatakas kasi in denial eh.
Yeah, there you go.
Ayaw aminin na birthday niya eh. Nag-freeze
Ayan,
ka
okay na siya. Okay na siya.
Okay, I'm back. Well, I suppose we should jump in to our
Yes,
yes,
guest. We are fortunate to have with us Vice President Lenny Robredo joining us live from Bicol. Vice President Robredo, thank you po for joining us, and welcome to the Chiefs.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Ed. Happy birthday.
Hello, Ma'am
Okay.
Vicky.
I'm
Thank you, ma'am.
Vicky Ami.
Yeah.
Well, ma'am, we do acknowledge that you've been very, very busy, not just this week, but for the last 2 weeks. But like it or not, po, the narrative that is being sold to a lot of first responders on the ground, and here I'm talking about the people from the AFP and the PNP, is that you have belittled their rescue and relief efforts versus the typhoon. I'm talking about the narrative that has been sold to a lot of the first responders. In other words, your words are being passed off as criticism of the response of these first responders. I say that because I am friends with a lot of PNP and AFP personnel, and I do see a lot of their posts and the posts of their friends. And that is how it comes across to some of them, at least. But it is a compelling and emotional narrative. So I'm wondering, are you aware of this, and how do you plan to address this narrative?
Ako, Ed, I'm aware of it. In fact, it has been brought to my attention by friends who also have friends in these organizations. But it is unfortunate. It is unfortunate in the sense that they're believing the kind of narrative that is being pushed, and that narrative is not true at all. In fact, if you get back to the tweets that I've been posting the night of Friday, I think it
November
was
13.
Friday.
Yes.
It was actually in response to the many distress calls that we've been receiving. Ako binalikan ko yon, Ed, Luchi, and Ami. I was in Cainta that night. I was in Cainta. I was visiting. I was giving relief goods to evacuees in Cainta. And I left Cainta at about 10 o'clock. Gutom na kami. We dropped by a Chowking branch in Cainta. And that was when I saw the many tweets of people asking for help. This was not just on Twitter, but also on Facebook. So yung sa akin, my initial reaction was, hanapin yung mga threads kung may sumasagot ba. Kung may sumasagot ba na, alam mo yun, I think the more important response there was anyone in government who has command, who would answer the distress calls. Parang ano lang, we heard you, we're doing something about it, we're doing everything we can to save you, wala. So yung sa akin, as early as Wednesday, wala pa nangyayari yung Cagayan. As early as Wednesday, I created a team already in my office because that was the night where we were also receiving a lot of distress calls in Ragay, Camarines Sur. That was Wednesday night. And, you know, I was in Manila. I was feeling very helpless. A lot of my kababayans were asking help that they be rescued. I formed an emergency team in the office. And the instruction was to look for anyone on the ground who can help them. So yung team namin, kanya-kanyang reach out sa uniformed personnel, pati nga BFP, pati MD, RRMC, lahat, pati media sa Bicol, AFP, lahat namin tinatawagan. And the only reason was to ask help. To
Ah,
ask help to
yeah.
rescue people who have been parang
Yes.
crying out distress calls. And
Ma'am
on
VP, yeah.
uh-uh.
I'll pounce on the word helpless. I mean, you're the vice president of a country. It's interesting to hear you say that you are helpless. Can you expound on that helplessness a bit more? Because you're the vice president. If you feel that way, uh, it's either they're persecuting you and making you, feel that at the very least they're not giving you support, or are you? What is the basis for saying that you feel helpless?
Alam mo, Luchi, ang reality naman talaga, I have been outside the Colombo for so long. Yung sa akin, bringing relief goods is easier because it is easy to ask for help from private organizations. But when it comes to rescuing people who need help, mahirap yon kasi you have to depend on government, you have to depend on people on the ground, and you're not there. Ako, it would have been different if I was here in Bicol because it would have been easier for me to ask help from anyone. But because I was in Quezon City at that time, parang ayun yung feeling of helplessness. So sa amin talaga, yung small team na binuo namin, talaga ang instruction, hanapin yung lahat na pwede makatulong. And the only reason is that people were asking for help. And
So, do you have access? Are you saying you do not have access to, say, well, the Department of Social Welfare, the NDRRMC, even the military? Wala ba kayong ganong access, or in a word, no, powers?
Ako, Luchi, ang experience namin, with AFP, we don't have any problems. Kasi para sa akin, every time we asked for assistance, every time we asked for help in the past, they've been very, very gracious in providing assistance to us. With the national government agencies, it depends on the agency. Pero yung experience namin, mas welcoming sa amin yung mga regional and provincial offices. Kadalasan kasi naalala ko when Secretary Piñol was still Secretary of DA, ang dami-dami naming sulat na pinapadala. Wala man lang ni isang acknowledgement. We have been asking for help. I've tried arranging meetings with some of the officials for us to discuss problems that we encounter on the ground, pero wala. So depende
Wow.
sa agency. Halimbawa, DOTR. Yung DOTR, we have been, alam ito ni Secretary Togade, we have been asking for a meeting with him to discuss many of the issues that we come across with on the ground. Hindi kami napapagbigyan. Pero yung sa akin, sa amin naman, our attitude is always not to cry about it, but to look for other ways where we can ask help. And our experience is the regional and provincial offices have been more welcoming, more cooperative with us.
No,
So
pwede po kayong, Madam Vice President, if you don't mind. So pwede po kayong dumiretso sa regional offices. I mean, you're running up against this at the cabinet level officials, but you're saying you could go straight to the regional offices. And I'm curious also, what makes Secretary Delphine Lorenzana different? What makes your relationship with the military different?
Ako ang experience ko, the military has always been very professional. In fact, kahit ako outside the Colombo, parang consistently, the only agency who has been inviting me to official functions is the AFP. And I think it is because they're very professional. They're not political. Yung sa amin, whenever we seek help, halimbawa, our communities are most often the farthest, the smallest ones. Halimbawa, in Marawi, in Lanao del Sur, madalas kami doon. Halimbawa, in Basilan we go, in Zamboanga we go. And if we need assistance with AFP, we have not encountered any difficulties with them at all. So yung sa akin, ang experience ko over the past 4 years, they have been very, very professional. So para sa akin, the controversial night, of Friday, I never called the AFP. Hindi ako tumawag sa AFP. Yun yung parang misconception that I was ordering uniformed men around. Hindi ganun yun. Yung team namin, yung nagsisik ng help. And they were amongst the ones na inihingaan namin ng tulong. In fact, I felt like because no one was assuring people who were asking for help, no one was assuring them that help was coming. Ako talaga yung nagsasabi na eto yung balita namin, papunta na doon. In fact, one platoon was already there the night before. Meron ng ibang augmentation, pero hindi sila nakakalusot sa Alcala. If you look at my tweets, it was all like that. And it was all on Twitter. I felt like baka meron din sa Facebook na asking for help. So ang ginawa ko, sinamarize ko lahat. Yung nasa Twitter. I posted that on Facebook, and the AFP reposted my post.
So is this how hard it is for you? Kasi syempre, ma'am, if this were a company, I would imagine that if I were the second in line and I read something among the social media posts of employees that such a department or unit needs help, I would go through the communication channels, right? But it seemed to me that night that you were referring to, all you had by way of communication was social media, that you couldn't get in touch with anyone in government to seek help, official help. Ganun ho ba yun?
Hindi ako mismo, Lucci, but our team, yung sinasabi ko, the team I formed, they were in touch with many people on the ground. In fact, we were trying to get in touch with the local government unit. We were trying to get in touch with, AFP. We were trying to get in touch with the Coast Guard. We were trying to get in touch with PNP. And that night, they were all very, very helpful. Kaya nga nagduda ako kasi parang the following day, biglang nag-turn around. Ako sabi ko baka mga napagalitan. Baka
Tanong ko lang, this is a typical situation because you've been in position for 4 years na. Ito ba yung nararanasan nyo? We've had many disasters. Ito ba yung nararanasan nyo? Is this typical cooperation that you get from government offices? Simula nung nag-umpisa kayo sa pwesto?
Ako, with disasters, I think this is the first time that we needed to seek their help as far as responding to distress calls was concerned. Kasi in the past, we never had any problems with relief operations, rehabilitation efforts after disasters. We never had any problems. Parang this was the first time that there were distress calls coming from people and there was a need for us to respond. And
In the past 4 years, meron ba kayong nararamdaman na certain areas or activities in government na off-limits sa Office of the Vice President? Because you're the number 2 official in the land, para kayong Deputy Commander-in-Chief. Did you ever feel na meron certain areas na off-limits sa inyo?
Marami, Ami. Marami na off-limits kami. Actually, hindi nila ako kino-consider na bahagi. Hindi nila ako kino-consider na bahagi ng pamahalaan. Pero I'll be very honest. Ang feeling ko, it's not that they don't want to, pero parang may pag-alangan na baka it will not be, parang some people will not look kindly on them if they become too accommodating of me. So,
Madam Vice President, when you say some people, I mean, I think we're all thinking of precisely the same people. But to be fair, when you say some people, does that automatically start with President Duterte or not necessarily?
Ako not necessarily, Robbie. I think it's the people around him actually. I think it's the people around him actually who do not look kindly on people who are, who are very accommodating of our requests. Kasi pag hindi naman sila pinupuna, wala namang problema eh. Halimbawa, in the past, the AFP has been very, very helpful as far as our operations are concerned. Halimbawa, yung COVID, yung pagpapadala ng mga PPE sets, we have been utilizing our private channels, but there have been a lot of instances where yung mga PPE sets namin, lalo na papuntang Mindanao, sinasama sa mga mission flights, wala naman nagkaroon ng problema. I think nagkaroon lang ng problema ngayon kasi it was very public and baka hindi nila yung nagustuhan.
Ma'am, balikan ko lang yung sinabi niyo po kanina that, at least I got the impression na nagbago yung ihip ng hangin ng mga officials who were helping you during the typhoon. The night after, I suppose, may umalma sa Malacanang. Exactly how did it happen? Paano ho nagbago? Can you be more concrete?
Actually, yung impression kasi, Ed, na pinapalabas, parang I was ordering officials around and it was not the case. Ang totoo talaga, yung team na finorm namin, sila yung nagko-contact ng mga people on the ground. Sila yung may kausap kung sino yung nandun. We were trying to get hold of anyone who can help respond to the distress calls. And alam mo, eto maraming tao yung nag-screenshot ng aking post na nirepost pa ng AFP. Na gustong sabihin, parang, parang it was a very good way of showing people that we were working together. Not necessarily myself, pero everyone who has the capacity to help. Pero parang the following day, marami na yung statements na parang minasama yun. Eh ako ang feeling ko, hindi naman yun sila mismo. Pero yung mga tao na minasama yung that I was very public about responding to the distress calls. Parang I think yun yung hindi nila nagustuhan.
I think when we had Secretary Panelo guest the other night, ang main beef nila is how you tend to, publicize your relief efforts at the cost of making government look like they have not done anything. Would you like to share with us your thoughts on it? Kasi parang yun na nga, he was even citing the case of a cabinet official who has spent millions of his personal money to help whoever that is. He never named, no? But he was comparing that official to you. Na your PR team daw is so very active in making it look like you're doing more work than the government.
Ako medyo nakakatawa yun actually, Luchi. But it is unfortunate that they're looking at it that way. Unang-una, they're very much aware that ako, if I was spending my own money, I don't have to be very transparent about it. Yung accountability sa akin lang. Pero alam ng lahat na I'm spending private money. I'm spending private money and itong nagdo-donate sa amin, nagdo-donate ito because they become aware of what we're doing. They become aware of what we're doing on social media. We don't have media following us around. I think you know that. We don't have media following us around. Ang sa amin, lahat namin dinodocument. Lahat namin dinodocument because our only currency in what we're doing is trust. Yung sa amin, we need to show our donors that we're spending their money. They intend to, parang based on their intentions when they donated their whether it's money or their goods to us. Sa amin, napaka-importante sa amin na well-documented lahat. Kahit nga hindi ako kasama sa operations, we're documenting that and we're posting that on Facebook. Yung sa akin, bakit parang tinitingnan nila na nagko-compete kami? Nagko-compete kami.
Madam Vice President, I'm still very curious about the dynamics within government. On the one hand, as everybody said and pointed out, you're the second highest official in the land. On the other hand, you are not part of this cabinet, and you make a distinction. I mean, repeatedly, you've made a distinction about you yourself and what requests you can make, and your team. As you say, yung team na tinayo namin, sila ang nagre-request, sila nakikipag-coordinate. But it's almost apologetic. It's all, and I'm wondering, why don't you? I mean, wala namang masama. You're the vice president, so why don't you reach out directly to cabinet officials, or for that matter, even the military? Siguro pa pinanggagalingan dito, is it that bad that you actually find yourself censoring yourself and getting ahead of the ramifications that you've experienced?
Actually, Robbie, it's a very weird situation. It's a very weird situation in the sense that dapat sana ideally ganun yon. Pero yung sa akin, over the years, I've experienced a certain kind of, hindi ko alam ko how to explain it. Parang sa akin, ang mas pakiramdam ko, ayoko silang madamay. Ayoko silang madamay sa akin. Halimbawa, some people in government, when they help me, sasabihin nila, ma'am, wag mo na lang sabihin ha. Wag mo na lang sabihin na ganito kasi baka mainit kami. So ako, I think I've been so used to that already. Kahit with local officials. Kahit with local officials, halimbawa, I will visit a community. Syempre, magko-courtesy call kami, I'm going there, etc., etc. Some local officials are unafraid to be seen with me. But marami sa kanila magsasabi, imi-meet kita privately pero hindi na ako magpapakita ha kasi baka malagay ako in hot water. I've been very used to that already. I've been
Sino po
very
yung mga yan?
and I think because that has been the case since 2016, I've been very, very careful. I've been very, very careful. Ako parating yung attitude ko, kung mahihingi ko lang naman sa private, hindi na ako gagambala sa gobyerno. And that's kind of a weird situation since the office of the vice president is a government office.
Yes.
Pero sa amin, we have depended on private partners and private organizations. Siguro more than 90% of the work that we're doing. Pag hindi lang talaga kaya ng private, saka kami lumalapit. Saka kami lumalapit sa gobyerno. And you know, it's to a certain extent, we were able to do the work that we're doing even if the situation is that ironic. Para tingin ko, Robbie, kahit napaka-weird talaga ng situation, parang nasanay na ako. Parang ang attitude ko lagi, sasalbahin na kita, hindi na kita idadamay. So yung sa akin gano'n. And you know, I've never allowed it to get in the way of the things we wanted to do. Gusto kong sabihin, hindi ko siya ginagamit na excuse. Hindi ko siya ginagamit na excuse na hindi ko to magagawa kasi hindi sila nagko-cooperate sa akin. Hindi gano'n. And I think to a very large extent, we've learned to innovate. We've learned to be creative. We've learned to collaborate more because we want to make a difference. We want to, you know, we want to push for our advocacies. And because ganito nga hirap yung sitwasyon, alam na namin na we don't, as much as possible, we don't depend on government.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, if you don't mind po, we will just go into a break for a few short minutes. So please stay with us. We will be right back.
Okay.
Welcome back, the Chiefs. We are still with Vice President Leni Robredo. Madam Vice President, we're talking about what limited things you can do. At the same time, what are some of the things that you can do? We're also talking about the motivations that government is imputing upon you, and your critics are imputing upon you. So we'll just go ahead and ask you, Madam Vice President, tatakbo po ba kayong presidente sa 2022?
Ako, I cannot say that for now, Robbie. Pag iniisip ko ngayon, parang napaka-imposible. In the sense na wala naman akong pera. Alam natin na to run for the presidency, I would need a lot of campaign funds to be able to put up a decent campaign. And 2022 is different from 2016 in the sense na yung 2016 meron, yung partido namin malaki pa, malakas, may resources. Ngayon wala yon. So napakahirap sabihin na oo. Pero in another sense, hindi ko din masabi na oo o hindi. Kasi historically, parang pinakita sa atin na the presidency is really destiny. No one can really prepare enough for it. Parang para sa akin, kung nakatagayon para sa'yo, mapapasayo yon. So para sa akin, it's parang exercise in futility to discuss the presidency now. Kasi sa akin, yung the times that I ran, parating last minute eh. I never planned for them. When I ran for Congress, I was saying over my dead body, I will not enter politics, but I did run. When I ran for the vice presidency, 1 month before I filed my certificate of candidacy, I was so sure that I wouldn't run, but yet I ran. So parang mahirap sabihin ngayon kasi baka lunukin ko na naman yung sasabihin ko. Pero if the basis would be the preparedness as far as resources is concerned, wala ako nun.
How do you feel about the fact that people now think that there is no strong opposition heading into election year eve? That the opposition right now is not really making any headway in terms of popularity, with President Duterte garnering a 91% popularity vote. How do you feel about that kind of political situation, as it were, being the head of the LP?
Ako, Luchi, to a very large extent, they are correct. They are correct in the sense that the opposition was not able to really put up a united front, a good fight as far as preparing for 2022 is concerned. Pero again, the lessons of history parang taught us that a lot of things can still happen in a year's time. Pwedeng merong mag-emerge na somebody na hindi pa pinag-uusapan ngayon. As I have said, when I ran for the vice presidency, siguro 1 year before that, no one was thinking of me. So marami pang pwedeng mangyari. Pwedeng wala sa tinitingnan ngayon. Biglang umusbong. It can always happen. So
But Madam Vice,
at this point nga,
Madam
Vice President, yun nga ang ini-impute ng Malacanang sa inyo, no? And nung nagsalita si Presidente, nagbitiw siya ng medyo masasakit na salita, no? And I know that it was based on certain premises for which Salsal Panelo and Delfin Lorenzana have already apologized to you. Pero sabi ng Malacanang, they see no need for the President himself to apologize. Kung sakasakali, ano bang feeling nyo? I know you haven't asked for it, but some people are saying na dapat mag-apologize din si Presidente sa inyo. Anong feeling nyo about a presidential apology sa mga nabitawan niyang salita?
Ako, Ami, honestly, I don't think it's forthcoming. Knowing the president, I don't think that he will ever apologize kahit pa false yung premise. Pero yung sa akin kasi, I wouldn't lose sleep over it. Lalo na kasi parang nangyari ito at a time na dapat nagkakaisa tayo. Nangyari ito at a time na grabe yung crisis na pinagdadaanan ng bansa natin. Parang para sa akin, nakakahiya naman sa tao kung ito yung pag-uusapan natin. So yung sa akin, while I have exerted some effort in dispelling the false information
Mm.
that has been going around, para sa akin, I don't want to lose focus on the work that I'm doing now.
Mm.
Sobrang grabe yung inaasikaso ng aming opisina. We're not done with our COVID-19 operations yet, and the 3 typhoons, grabe din yung inaasikaso. Parang para sa akin, at may panahon para pag-usapan yung politika, pero sana naman wag ngayon. Hindi ko I cannot control what the
Mm.
president and his men parang are the narrative they're pushing. Pero yung sa akin lang, ako I don't want to lose my focus.
Madam
Sinigot
Vice President,
Escalating
if you don't
because
mind,
your children have been dragged into the
si Sal
discussion.
Panelo, si Sal Panelo daw nag-apologize, nag-text sa inyo ng apology si Sal Panelo. Did you reply to it? Did you reply to it?
No, I haven't read it if he texted me, but I read the article where he said he already texted me. Pero ako lang, when I read the article, parang sorry, not sorry. Parang sinasabi niya, okay, mali yung information ko na sumakay pala siya sa C-130, pero yung mga goods niya sinakay pa din ng military. But that was not the point. The point was, his imputation was very malicious. Ang sinabi niya, sumakay ako sa C-130 kasi gusto kong mag-free load. Gusto kong mag-free load sa goods ng DSWD kasi gusto kong palabasin na akin yon. Alam mo yon? If he will ask for an apology, ikumpletuhin niyo yung parang napilitan siya kasi he was confronted with the truth already. Pero he was not really apologetic about it.
Madam Vice President, if you don't mind, gusto ko lang pong balikan yung tanong ni Lucci. No? I mean, your thoughts as to, critics saying, napakahina ng opposition. You're not getting your act together, mahina, patumpik-tumpik. But what do you say to critics and concerned citizens who are also saying that weakness actually starts with you? It starts precisely with, some people will say, it starts with your response to that question. If you are the leader of the opposition, are you going to run? I mean, certainly you understand why these questions are put forth to you. We are months away from 2021, which is unofficially the start of election season. It was around this time that Vice President Jojo Binay officially resigned from the Aquino cabinet because he said, look, let's not kill each other. I am the leader of the opposition. I would be seeking that office. And I guess people are looking for a strong indication from you on ano ba mode ng opposition? Are you still looking for a modus vivendi to work within the cabinet of the Vice of President Duterte? Or are you now really fully embracing the fact that you are the face of the opposition?
Ako naman, Robby, palagay ko wala na yung modus vivendi sinasabi mo, wala na yon. Wala na yon. Pero yung sa akin kasi, I understand that I'm the face of the opposition. But I have a lot of limitations, Robby. Yung limitations ko, napakarami. As I was telling you earlier, hindi ako pareho ni VP Binay in 2016. In the sense na meron siyang solid na partido na would be able to, with a solid organization where which can support his run for the presidency. Alam mo naman na yung LP talaga na decimate. Yung LP talaga na decimate. They were so successful in breaking the party up. Yung sa akin, while the party is still there are a few of us politicians left in the party. But we're looking at private citizens already to form part of the party, but that is never enough to push for the presidency. Para sa akin para may feasible na lalaban for the presidency as far as the opposition is concerned, hindi siya kaya ng isang partido lang. it has to be an alliance between and among
Yeah.
many different groups. And ngayon, merong mga movements pero we're not there yet. Yung sa akin, ako ang pinaka-limitation ko talaga, Robbie, napaka-iksi nung aking experience as a politician to be able to do the kind of organizing that the other politicians like VP Binay was able to do in 2016. Marami akong limitasyon. Marami akong limitasyon in the sense na relatively napakabago ko sa politika. Ang alam kong gawin ng maayos yung trabaho ko.
But surely, as vice president, you can rally the opposition. I mean, you would be the most logical choice to rally the opposition. It doesn't have to be you, I guess, but there has to be one figure, right? I mean, it usually starts with one figure, and the most logical is you. Are you not going to assume at least that role, even if only symbolically, but actively? You know what I'm saying? Because you're already there. So, rally, is that something that you're not even considering doing at the present time, heading into election?
Ako, Luchi, I've been trying to rally. The different groups, but not exactly with 2022 in mind. Ako kasi napaka-precarious ng nangyari sa bahagi ng opposition in the sense that you know where we were coming from in 2016. And to a very large extent, we were caught flat-footed as far as strengthening the party is concerned. Maraming mga kakulangan, and I think yung pagka-political neophyte ko was a factor dun sa mga kakulangan na yon. Yung sa akin, there have been talks within the party already, and not just with the party, but with groups we are allied with. Yung sa akin, we have been working on. We were in the process of consolidating when COVID-19 happened. We were in the process of consolidating when the typhoons happened. And yung pakiusap ko talaga, I'll be very honest with you. Yung pakiusap ko talaga, pwede bang bumuelo na muna ako sa trabaho kong ito? But all the other people who have the means to help in consolidating everything, gumalaw na. Pero ako, I'm so immersed in the day-to-day. I'm so immersed in the day-to-day of this COVID-19 operations and the typhoon operations. Pero again, sobrang hirap siya for me. Sobrang hirap siya for me in the sense na kulang yung experience ko sa politika. Yung sa akin, mas tinitingnan ko na maybe with the work that I do, it will be an avenue where I will be able to consolidate not just the politicians, but the different groups who share the same advocacies with us. Yung ngayon, 2022 is really the farthest from my mind, whether you believe it or not. Yung sa akin talaga, sobrang immersed ako. Sobrang immersed ako with the day-to-day. I think si Ed nakita na how we were working with COVID-19 relief operations. Dumating pa itong
Ulysses. At saka
Talaga-
Ronnie, yes.
sobrang hirap for me.
Pero yun nga ang problema, Madam Vice President. Talagang itinuturo nga nila yung eleksyon. In fact, yung warning, I will go back to the statement of the President. Warning niya, pag ikaw tatakbo, waswasin kita dyan. I know that if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. Pero sa ngayon, ano yung pinaka biggest concern niya kung sakasakali? na pwedeng gawin sa inyo ng gobyerno?
Amin naman, natin. Nakita naman natin kung ano yung ginawa. Anong ginawa kay Senator Laila de Lima, ano yung ginawa kay Maria Ressa, ano yung ginawa sa ABS-CBN. So anything is possible. Pero yung sa akin kasi, with the warnings, ang parate lang tanong, would that stop me from continuing with what I have been doing? And certainly the answer is no. Yung sa akin nagtatrabaho ako and kung nagagalit sila na nagtatrabaho ako, hihinto ba ako magtrabaho dahil nagagalit sila? Again, the answer is no. Pero yung sa akin, yung pag-threaten ng 2022, para sa akin, ano ba naman? Nasa gitna tayo ng mga kalamidad, 2022 yung iniisip nyo. Yung para sa akin, kung iisipin ko yung 2022, gusto bang sabihin, magsuslow down ako para hindi ko sila, alam mo yon, hindi ko ma-ruffle yung kanilang feathers. Parang palagay ko unfair naman yun sa tao.
Yes, ma'am. Pero ma'am, from your point of view po, what do you think is their perception of your vulnerability? Where are you most vulnerable? I mean, what do you think they think to be your most vulnerable spot?
Ako hindi ko alam, Ed. I can't speak for them. Pero tingin ko kasi, ang tingin nila sa akin, ito mahina, babae, madaling takutin. I think yun yung mga nasa isip kasi nakita nyo naman na kung paano magsalita against me. And this is not the first time. This is not the first time that the president threatened me. This is not the first time that the president lambasted me. Ilang beses niya na ako sinabihan na walang alam, bobo, incompetent, in not so many words. Pero sa akin nga, Ed, yung pinakapunto, hindi ko naman makokontrolan yung sinasabi niya. Pero ang makokontrolan ko yung ginagawa ko. And yung ginagawa ko,
may particular insinuation po yung Pangulo when he was talking the other night. In fact, we asked Secretary Panelo about it, and he gave us a very creative explanation. So I'm wondering po, would you care to address the insinuations of the president?
Ako kasi hindi ko napanood yung press con. Ang awareness ko lang kung ano yung nababasa ko. Ang awareness ko kung ano nababasa ko sa mga news items. Halimbawa, marami siyang sinabi na I was ordering the military around, na nagkukumpetensya ako sa kanya. Ano pa ba yung sinasabi niya? The last
part po.
The last part that he was saying na umuwi ako sa ibang bahay.
Opo.
And para sa akin, sobrang bastos. I think it was a very misogynistic remark. And that can only happen against women politicians like myself. Hindi yun mangyayari sa mga lalaki.
Mhm.
And I think he is taking advantage of the fact that I am a woman. And yung pambabastos is something that I will not allow. Kaya nga ako sumagot agad ako kasi if he thinks he can get away with it, nagkakamali siya. Yung sa akin,
Yesterday po si Secretary Roque. Opo. And yesterday po si Secretary Roque also brought in your kids.
yes. Yun nga, Ed, parang yung ating gobyerno has already come down to this. Ganito na ba yung level ng governance na pinag-uusapan na hindi ko alam kung ano yung naka-instigate sa kanila for them to stoop down to this level. Alam mo yun, parang I was just doing my job. I am being accused of competing with them. Parang para sa akin, hello. Bakit paano ako makikipagkompetensya na I have very limited mandate, the entire bureaucracy, all the resources are at your disposal. Paano ko makakayang makipagkompetensya? Parang minasama yung trabaho ko. The fact that I was just doing my job, pag tiningnan nila, ewan ko lang if any of you are familiar with what I have been doing for the past 4 years, wala namang bago. Wala namang bago. What I'm doing now is not extraordinary compared to what I have been doing since 2016. We have been working with the communities in the last 4 years. Yung ginagawa namin ngayon, responding lang naman. Merong accusation that I'm competing. And yun yung pinaka-premise ng pagkapikon. Yung para sa akin, mali yung accusation. Mali yung accusation and nakakalungkot na yung conversation parang sobrang baba na.
Ma'am,
If you ask me, the Filipino people deserve better.
Ma'am, given everything that you've said, and this is the same picture that people are saying, so sabi nyo nga, sobrang baba na ng conversation. You said modus vivendi is out the window already. I mean, there's no reasonable way to think that you'll still be part of the cabinet and so on. So, and at the same time, as we said, part of the big context is elections in 2022, whether you like it or not. So, ano po ang mode nyo sa 2021? It cannot, I would presume to think that it cannot just be na, hindi, trabaho lang ng trabaho until 2022. So, what exactly is going to be your mode in 2021?
Ako kasi, Robbie, ako talaga, right now, it's difficult to think, parang to plan too far ahead. It's very difficult now. Parang it would have been different pre-March, before March. Parang before March, in fact, our party has been meeting already, has been planning activities in partnership with many other groups who share our advocacies. Pero nung pumasok kasi yung March, parang bumago lahat. Parang binago lahat in the sense na pakiramdam namin mahirap pag-usapan ngayon yung maraming bagay because of what's happening. So para sa akin, while I'm ready to talk about moving to presume how things will work out, kasi hindi nga natin alam kung hanggang kailan tayo andito sa sitwasyon na to. Yung sa akin, some of the party members have been doing their rounds. Halimbawa, recruitments have been parang even before March, we have been recruiting already. We have been recruiting non-politicians to join the party, and that's one of the attempts to strengthen the party and to make up for what we have lost. I think they're trying to resume recruitment now. After nung mga nag-GCQ na, nag-start na ulit ng recruitment. But there have been talks with other groups already. There have been groups who have tried reaching out already. And I've always been open to that. Pero ako talaga, while I'm open to these talks, I've been in some of them, yung sa akin talaga, yung concentration ko talaga, itong ginagawa namin. In fact, the reason why I'm in Bicol now is every day I've been going around. This morning, I was in Catanduanes and Albay. Tomorrow, I'll be in Camarines Norte. Alam mo yun, I was in Quezon, I was in Cagayan and Isabela. It's very difficult to think about the political organization when things like this is happening in our midst.
But of course, people are thinking that if you look at, for example, what happened with the U.S. elections, where everybody was thinking before COVID that it would most likely be a second term for President Trump. But because of COVID, the COVID in effect presented an opportunity to turn things around for the opposition, i.e. the Democrats. Are you not seeing an imperative to also find in this situation an opportunity to show the opposition can have an alternative to the present dispensation, which is probably what oppositions, I mean, not probably, but surely what oppositionists ought to be doing, I would imagine, unless you're ready for another 6-year term with the administration, which you are criticizing and hoping to defeat?
Ako tingin ko, Lucci, after President-elect Biden won the elections, parang mas naging hopeful. Mas naging hopeful yung maraming tao in the sense na before kasi parang may air of resignation. May air of resignation before na parang with the surveys, with the approval ratings. Pero because of what happened in the US, parang nabuhayan ulit. Parang nabuhayan ulit yung maraming tao. And I am not in a position to discuss the specifics, but there are people within the party and outside the party who are in fact talking already. And I've given my blessings to some people in the party to discuss with other organizations. Pero yun nga, ako talagang sinabi ko na if you will allow me, tatrabahuhin ko lang muna ito because our hands are full now. And I think they respect that. My party members respect the fact that I'm immersed in the day-to-day operations with COVID and the typhoons. I would guess that meetings continue with different organizations, like-minded organizations, but talagang hindi nakakabuelo. Hindi nakakabuelo because of everything that's happening now. Halimbawa, nung nag-GCQ tayo, parang yung air pabalik na dun sa normal, and then the typhoons happen. So ako, I would guess na baka when 2021, baka when we enter 2021, it would be better. Better in terms of there might be organizing initiatives already. Yung organizing kasi ngayon, na alam ko, yung within the party pa lang. I was telling you earlier that we've been recruiting non-politicians sa partido. But with regards to solidifying alliances, it's still a work in progress. There's a lot of discussions going on. I'm not really taking an active part in the discussions right now because of the work that we're doing at the Office of the Vice President. But I have given my blessings to some of our party mates to get involved in discussions with other groups. Tingin ko mas magkakaroon ng forma pag medyo nakahinga-hinga tayo ng konti with all the calamities that we've been going through.
Okay. Marami pa po kaming question, but unfortunately, we're running out of time. Sana po the next time we have you here, we'll be able to ask you about the COVID and typhoon.
Yes.
Vice President Leni Robredo. Thank you very much.
Maraming salamat.
Natin.
Hindi na namin napag-usapan yung
Marami pa eh.
visual. Sa susunod po. Thank you.
Anytime.
Oh,
Salamat po.
Thank you.
Mas maraming kwento ako with that.
good. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am VP.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Happy
Maraming
birthday.
salamat po.
Happy birthday. We'll be discussing the COVID crisis as we move to our next guest, the two members of the Octa research team, Father Nick Austriaco and Professor Guido David. Good evening,
Hi,
Father.
Father. Hi, Prof.
Good evening po.
Alam ko po, latest development, Davao and Baguio tumataas, ano? How concerning is that? And considering your projections for the end of the month, how worrisome is this sa trend natin ngayon for COVID?
Well, I would say it's very worrisome yet. Actually, yung Baguio, it's already going down. Yung Davao, it's going up. Pero we're concerned about it. Pero hindi pa naman nag-change yung trajectory ng buong country as a whole. So it's generally part of the projections. So I think our projections will still be okay for now. Ang important thing also is NCR is still on a downward trend. Positivity is now at 4%, and hospitalization is not as high as it was before. So all the indicators are trending in the right direction. Yun nga, except for some isolated hotspots, But even Benguet is already improving. Baguio showed actually a lot of improvement. So ang concern natin ngayon is actually Davao City and Cebu.
And
Cebu
Dr.
again?
Dr. David, Dr. David, yung nabanggit nyo nga, no, NCR is still on a downtrend nationwide. We're keeping the crucial indicators still in a relatively acceptable place. But all of this comes as, I've been driving more and more now to work. And pagrabe ang traffic. Yesterday, it was almost like a normal Christmas season traffic, and people are observing the same things. More and more people are going to malls. More and more people are eating out. We feel that even in social media. And yet, despite that, the numbers are relatively still stable. I mean, does that add to the positive context? Does that further heighten the positive context here?
Yeah, I will answer that, and then I will let Father Nick add to what I'm going to say, because I'm sure he has some opinion about that. It's also a bit amazing to me. I also go out every now and then to buy some important things, buy some groceries. Nakita ko nga, yung traffic is very bad, and a lot of people are outside, and I see a lot of people now not wearing masks. I mean, at least outdoors, so the risk would be much less. But so in a way, it's a bit confounding that the numbers are still trending downward. I mean, I'm not sure why that is. It might be because indoors we're still following protocols. I mean, kasi it's important to wear the face mask and the face shield. So of course we're a little bit concerned. I mean, Father might be seeing some a different changing trend, but I mean, we're not seeing it yet, but it's very possible. And I'll let Father continue the answer.
So I agree with Professor Guido. So the mobility is certainly increasing, and many markers, many indicators for mobility in the Philippines and the NCR are going up. But one of the things we've noticed, and this is internationally, is that the primary driver for the second wave has been household mixing. So it's actually people visiting each other's house. So for example, the CDC this morning, or in the last couple of days, the United States is going to have Thanksgiving next week. And many people who are dealing with pandemic management are very nervous, because in Europe, what drove the second wave was mixing of households. And now with Thanksgiving next week, significant numbers of people in the United States have revealed to polls that they are going to have large Thanksgiving parties. So, and the context in Europe has been, when you are sitting with people in your house, you feel very safe. So you take off your mask,
Yes.
you enjoy yourself, you talk. So even if you go out now, people are still wearing masks. I mean, there's a lot more people, but they're still wearing masks. And one of the things we're noticing in the rest of the world is most of the transmissions now are happening in these parties. So if you're, the concern for us should be Christmas. So Simbang Gabi and all of the office Christmas parties, the concern there is that you're going to have mixing of households, and a mixing of many households within a 1 week period. And this is the kind of context where super spreading can occur. So, the Okta team is still, we watch these data every day. Now, you have to keep in mind that there will always be a lag for a few weeks. So the numbers, just the way the numbers are, the reporting, and then the typhoons have really complicated the picture, because what you will see is when a typhoon hits, the number of caseloads will come down, because not many people will go to the test, not many tests will be taken. And then you're going to have an uptick the few days after the typhoon, because everyone will now go back. And so you think that the daily cases have gone up, but it's not quite clear because of the typhoon. So hopefully the typhoons, we won't have a typhoon for a while, God willing. We are still waiting to see the impact of the typhoons on Marikina. And there are certain barangays in Quezon City where there were enormous numbers of people who were evacuated to evacuation centers in the middle of the night. And so it was difficult to maintain all the minimal safety standards. So, we will see. If there is a spike, you will see it probably a week from now, because it takes time for that disease, for the transmission to spread, and then for tests to pick them up.
What's happening now in Baguio and Davao is that both of them had health workers actually asking for stricter controls, asking for a timeout actually, in view of the workload, I guess, that they're also now experiencing. Was it just a matter of hospital occupancy on a high level that drove them to implement stricter protocols, or was it non-compliance of protocols and stuff? What was it?
Let me address that. So according to the reports in the news from Baguio, the recent surge was actually, rather than widespread community, was localized to 2 barangays. And so those 2 barangays were contained. This is the mayor. The mayor said he was able to contain this. And during that time, there is going to be a large number of people who rush to the hospitals. If you remember, this is what was happening at the end of July here in the NCR. The difference is that in the NCR, it was widespread community transmission. So it's not just 1 or 2 barangays. It was spreading throughout the entire NCR. And so hospitals throughout the NCR were being overwhelmed, which is why the medical frontliners asked the president to declare an MECQ. From what I read in the news, the health professionals in Baguio, when they were told that the spread of the transmission was limited to 2 barangays and that it was contained, that they were willing to withdraw their request for the timeout because it was not going to be an extended surge. You see, if you remember, in August, it lasted 3 weeks. So in Manila, once we put in on August 4th, we were still going for 2 weeks. There were still 2 weeks of high caseload. So there was a 3-week period. From the news reports, it seems like it was a short burst and that was contained. And so hopefully the wave is behind them already. And if that's the case, you do not really need a timeout because it will naturally pass.
I see. Okay. What about Davao? What was causing that? What caused the surge?
To be honest with you, when reading the news reports, it's not quite clear if there's any one reason for why there's been these spreads, the transmission in Davao. I have a Dominican priest whose family is from there and from a barrio outside the city, and they were in lockdown already a week or 2 ago.
Yes.
So
And they have one of the longest curfews. They have one of the longest curfews in the country.
The way he was explaining it to me, no one was able to leave his barangay. So it's not quite clear what the local barangay interpreted that to mean. His parents could not leave their homes. So it's not quite clear, what the mayor has suggested, that it's actually just increased movement of people, which is why she has limited mobility. No matter what the cause, once she limits mobility, I believe starting yesterday, today, or tomorrow, you're going to see that come down. It will come down within a week or 2 because mobility feeds the pandemic. And she's requiring barangay passes now. So people just will not want to go out. So that lack of mixing will be very good for decreasing that transmission.
Father, are you now more optimistic about the vaccine? Because the
Moderna vaccine is much better for us. Okay,
Yes.
So it can be stored at -20, and then in a regular refrigerator for 2 weeks. So that's great. The difficulty, of course, is the Moderna vaccine has lower capacity than the Pfizer vaccine. So Pfizer's promising 1.3 billion. Moderna is only half to 1 billion. We're not quite sure of distribution. I have friends that I'm talking to, and again, we're not quite sure how manufacturing will be limited.
To both of you, given what you said, you've observed about what drove the second wave in Europe, and particularly the intermixing of different households, particularly among relatives and among close friends, what would you recommend to the IATF, and for that matter to our households, then to companies and every entity? What would you recommend heading into the Christmas season?
Well, I'll start and then Professor Guido can follow. I would just say this, right? The best advice is the advice that the governments of Europe and the United States are telling their citizens. Have a party, but keep the party small and keep the party as limited as possible with regards to households. And in a way they cannot do there, let's do it outside.
Okay.
Yes,
Let's do it outside.
Yes, I agree. I mean, house outside carries a lot less risk compared to indoors. I mean, dining indoors, because the air is diluted. Droplets will not be concentrated, so it's more difficult to get infected actually when you are outdoors. And maybe I don't know. Maybe we could have social gatherings with face masks. I don't know if that's possible. We might have social. My family might have social gatherings. Some of my sisters are frontliners, so I'm not sure if it would be safe. So I mean, I think we just have to be more vigilant about this. I don't know if we could have everyone having a social gathering tested, that would be great. But I mean, I don't think we could implement that. I mean, even on an antigen test, for example. I mean, why not? But yes, these things will happen. We might have a surge that could be very possible, or an increase, or even an uptick. But we hope it's going to be manageable. And I mean, like Father and Ranjit always says, I mean, the uptick seems inevitable with this upcoming holiday season. We will just try to manage it and maybe minimize the effect, so that by January we will be on a downward trend again.
Okay. On that note, unfortunately, we're out of time. Father Nicanor.
Thank you again.
Thank you, Father.
Salamat po.
Prof.
Guido Davida of Octa Research. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
evening.
And we're OT na, no? That will be all for this special edition of The Chiefs. We hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. I'm Ami Paminton of the Philippine Star.
I'm Lucy Cruz Valdez of News 5.
I'm Robbie Alampay, and we are One News.